You're watching the Brother Henry and You Show.
Engaging. Informative. Inspirational.
Enjoy today's program. Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. We have an exciting series for you that we will start today called the Walk Through Rejection. You know, rejection is something that is unavoidable. You know, I believe in one time or another in our lives, many of us have experienced rejection in some form or fashion. So in the next 7 weeks, we will be talking about different forms of rejection, different aspects of rejection, different perspectives and ways how we can view rejection. And not only that, but also how we can overcome rejection. And I'm excited that you are joining me on this journey for the next 7 weeks. We're going to be talking about the walk through rejection. I really believe that this is a relatable subject. I believe this is something that a lot of people have overcome, and it is something that a lot of people are currently dealing with, such as myself. I'll be the first to tell you that I still struggle with rejection at times. So I really believe this episode is going to be a blessing to you today. I would like to encourage you to share this broadcast with your friends, because I really believe that it's going to inspire you in some way. And today we're going to go into part one. We're going to talk about dealing with the man in the mirror, or dealing with the woman in the mirror, whoever you are. When it comes to rejection, sometimes we have to first of all deal with you. Because sometimes, how many know that many times when we look at rejection, we always look at it from the perspective of he is rejecting me, or she is rejecting me, or they rejected me. But how many know that the most devastating rejection is self-rejection? And self-rejection is pretty much when you reject yourself before anybody does it to you. So what I could never understand is, how is it that we have become so bombarded in our minds and in our thinking, and we have convinced ourselves that they're rejecting me, they're coming against me, and so forth. That's where our focus is mainly at. While alone, you don't even accept yourself. You're mad because people are rejecting you, but you don't accept yourself. You don't even love yourself. You're mad because people don't love you, but you don't love yourself. So before we get started, I really believe that the most devastating thing that many people deal with today is self-rejection. You can't even accept yourself. You reject yourself. You don't even like who you are. More or less, we're more focused on how others reject us, when we should be focusing on, do we even love and accept ourselves? So in the next several weeks, I will be covering a subject that many people deal with. It seems that almost everybody is affected by rejection in some degree. Whether they admit it or not, I think many of us are affected by rejection to some degree. You know, the way one person may deal with rejection may not be the way another person deals with rejection, but in some form or fashion, many of us are dealing with it. So I believe it is vital that we understand how it works, but not only understanding how rejection works, but also finding freedom from it. We must understand that rejection is always associated with self, me. Now this is the part, like I said, we're going to focus mainly on today. Not necessarily that people reject us, and that's evident, that's a given, that's going to happen. People are going to reject you, but I think that rejection, first of all, is associated with self, me. And until we look in the mirror and deal with the rejection that we ourselves are dealing with, it will only grow. Now, my greatest struggle in the past was I didn't like being rejected. I still struggle with that at times. How many of you would just be honest and just raise your hand and say, I don't like being rejected? If you were to be honest, you would say, you're right, Henry, I don't like being rejected. Many of us don't like being rejected. Feeling rejected really hurts. I was trapped in hopelessness and feeling worthlessness. And that's the way rejection will leave you feeling. It'll leave you feeling hopeless. It will leave you feeling like you're all alone. It'll leave you feeling like you're unworthy. It'll leave you feeling like you're not good enough. But how do you know that all these things are not true? This within itself made me feel insecure and worse about myself. Because how many know that when you reject yourself or when somebody else rejects you, it does leave you feeling some kind of way about yourself. I was on a cycle of fear and low self-esteem, yet thinking, why am I being rejected, while all along ignoring why am I feeling this way? And that is the challenging question that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Okay, you're feeling this way, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling ignored, you got low self-esteem, you're on this cycle of fear, and this is where I've been at one time, and I still currently struggle with this. But we never ask ourselves, why am I dealing with this? Why am I feeling this way? And I believe it is imperative that we not only challenge that question, but also answer that question. Rejection is a reflection of something that's already within your heart. It goes back to what I said earlier. Self-rejection is the greatest rejection. Not necessarily somebody else rejecting you. I'm not saying that doesn't cause pain. I'm not saying that doesn't hurt. But I think the greatest rejection is when you reject yourself. And rejection is always a reflection of something that's already there in your heart. Sometimes we think we are being rejected, but in reality, your rejection was already present. Your rejection was already there. So if you're that person that's already has rejection in your heart and somebody rejected you, they basically added fuel to the fire, if you get what I'm saying. They basically intensified that rejection in your life because you were already dealing with it. So I didn't want to deal with me. Can I just be real with you today? And many of us that struggle with rejection, we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to look in the mirror and say, I am dealing with rejection. How can I fix this? I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of thinking this way about myself. How can I deal with this? How can I come out of this? I don't want to cope with this forever. So I didn't want to deal with me. I didn't want to look into the mirror and ask myself these important questions that we're discussing right now. You have to look in the mirror. If let me say something. If you're tired of being tired, you'll do something about it. You'll do something about it. You won't wait on such and such. You'll do something about it. You'll look in the mirror and yourself. In what ways can I change as it relates to rejection? And you will look at some ways, creative ways that you can change, or ways you can come out of rejection, even if it's for a season, and you will appropriate that. Let me define rejection, since this is going to be the central focus of our series. Rejection means the dismissing or refusing of a proposal or ideal. I had to also come to terms with reality that rejection is an emotion. Did you recall what I said earlier, that rejection made me feel some kind of way? Worthlessness, made me feel lonely. If you are dealing with rejection, many emotions and feelings also is rooted to rejection. And I'm going to name you a few. So if you're dealing with rejection today, there are many emotions and feelings that are associated with rejection. And here's a few of them that I've often dealt with. Low self-esteem. Number 2, it makes you feel bad about yourself. Number 3, self-pity, which is excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over one's own trouble. How many know that rejection can create self-pity? Woe is me. Why am I the only one going through it? I mean, you just throwing a big old pity party. Rejection is a real emotion, and don't allow anyone to tell you that it's not. It is a real emotion. But many things also is tied to it, and it's important to deal with that. When I got real with myself, and I didn't need nobody to convince me of this, when I got real with myself and started to examine the core of rejection in my life, I discovered 4 things that I personally was dealing with. Number 1, I was dealing with what we call perceived rejection. Perceived rejection is when a person accepts something as rejection when it really isn't. Rejection can take over you so much. Rejection can overwhelm you so much that not only do you feel rejected, you will start to perceive that those around you are rejecting you, or someone is rejecting you, when in reality, they're not. But because you've experienced rejection, because you've experienced hurt, you will start to think that other people are hurting and rejecting you when they're not even hurting or rejecting you. Can you just imagine having a mindset that everybody's rejecting me? I'm just going to break it down for you. Can you imagine having a mindset everybody is against me? I couldn't imagine carrying that mindset around. So yeah, I dealt with perceived rejection. And you believe that everyone is rejecting you. Example, let me give you some examples. Why wasn't I accepted? I used to say that. Why did they talk to me? Why don't they like me? What did I tell you the most devastating thing about rejection? Me, self, me, mine, I. Self-rejection. This is what it got a lot to do with right here. Me, mine, I. Why wasn't I accepted? Why did they talk to me? Why don't they love me? Why don't they like me? It's all about you. Remember what I said earlier, rejection is always a reflection of self. I had to stop creating realities which were illusions in my mind that never exist. And that's what many of us are dealing with. We are creating illusions. An illusion is sometimes associated with magic. It's something that appears to be there when it's not. But many times we create these illusions in our mind that nobody loves me, nobody likes me, woe is me, I'm a bad person, I'm horrible, I'm not worthy. We create these illusions. Everybody's against me. Everybody's rejecting me. Everybody said no. So we create these illusions in our mind, and we've convinced ourselves, we persuaded ourselves that what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing in my life is true. It is not true. Everybody is not rejecting you. Everybody is not against you. That's why it's important to deal with this thing called perceived rejection, because if you don't, you'll start to convince yourself that everybody is against you or somebody has something against you. Number 2, I had a fear of not being accepted. This is where you feel unwanted and unaccepted. I've been there before. Have you been there? Nobody on the planet Earth don't want to deal with this area that I'm talking about now, because every human being that I've come across, they want validation. They want to have that sense of belonging. If they're connected to something or someone, they want to be loved. They want to be accepted. They don't want to feel unwanted. They don't want to feel unloved. That is not a good place to be. This is not only a rejection issue, this is also a validation issue, because we want somebody to validate us even when we don't validate ourselves. Even when we don't accept ourselves, it'll make me at least feel better about myself if I find someone to validate me and who I am. And I want to tell you today that you need to first of all look in the mirror and validate your own self and tell your own self that you are good, and that you are amazing, and that you need to validate your own self instead of seeking for validation elsewhere. We don't know ourselves. We haven't accepted ourselves. We look outside of ourselves for validation, still with no fulfillment. Many today have a fear of not being accepted. Does their approval of you give your life meaning and purpose? That's the question I want to ask you right now. Does their approval of you give your life meaning and purpose? Number 3, I had a fear of abandonment. The feeling of insecurity, emptiness, feeling alone is the worst feeling ever because I had fear of abandonment, feeling like an outsider. It had a negative impact on my relationships and friendships in the past. You know, I'm going to read a scripture. Psalms chapter 27, verse 10 says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." It says father and mother, but anybody can forsake you. Anybody can reject you. Anybody can abandon you. But even when you feel that way, the good news is that God is there with you. And not only God, let's make it even practical, because a lot of what I'm going to be teaching is going to be both practical and spiritual. People are even there for you, even when you don't believe it. There's always somebody in your corner. So I had a fear of abandonment, feeling alone, feeling like I'm all by myself. Again, there was another illusion in my mind that I've created and made into a reality that wasn't true. The last one is number 4, the fear of not being good enough. How many of us have felt that way before? Not only have we felt that way, we have to ask ourselves, what does that actually mean? When you carry this form of rejection, it leaves you feeling that no matter what you do, or how you do it, or how good you do it, you're still never good enough. Not only for yourself, you're not good enough for other people. Man, this is horrible. So let's stop assuming that you're not good enough. It's time to get to the truth of who you really are. Ask those tough questions. Get down to the core of why am I dealing with rejection? Why do I feel this way? Always remember that it starts with you. Looking into the mirror, because it's only when you look into the mirror when you only see a reflection of yourself. And when you look into the mirror, you don't see nobody else. You don't see your friends. You don't see your spouse. You know why? Because it's you that's dealing with the rejection. And when all is said and done, if you're truly tired of being tired, when you truly get the mindset of enough is enough, I want to look in the mirror, I want to deal with this, I'm tired of coping with this, how can I get through this? How rejection is making me feel? I guarantee you, you will eventually deal with the man in the mirror. I hope you enjoyed the teaching. And if you thought today was good, we still got several weeks to go. It's going to get even much better. Next week, we're going to part 2. We're going to talk about who am I? And I look forward to joining you next week. I'll see you next week.
Hi, my name's Heather. Thank you for watching the Brother Henry and You show today. If you've enjoyed the show today, visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You show. Thank you for watching and have a blessed day.